This local farmer is saying he can't keep eggs.
I've had a steady customer base for years, so I was already doing a good business. But I used to have enough surplus eggs to sell to retailers who resold them at farmers markets and stuff like that. But I have been selling out every day, and I've had at least 5 new customers a week since this egg shortage started. So I haven't had any extra to sell to the retailers at all. I fill the bucket with water. The eggs are like gold right now. I've had to ask people to keep it to 2 dozen because I'm afraid some people have been coming in and buying all the eggs and then reselling them. The profit margin is very slim. I have to buy, the feed is so expensive, and just the cost of maintaining the facilities and everything else, it's just, there's not a lot of money in it at all.
So when you talk about, okay, so he was saying that he definitely doesn't have a high profit margin, right? Hold on, y'all. He doesn't have a high profit margin. So a lot of these farmers are actually doing it because they love to do it, and that they care about their community. They care about the people. This picture is bigger than just the grocery stores. The grocery stores are just jumping on the bandwagon and on the train, and they're benefiting and they're gaining what they need to gain off, and they're opportunists. So they're optimizing the opportunity to be able to increase their profit margin, if nothing else, in the eggs, because of the hysteria that is attached to this bird flu.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak, and thanks for taking the time to read my article. If we just use basic pattern recognition skills, we can see that what is going on now with bird flu is very close to an exact replay of what happened with COVID. What we see is a several-step process by which people intentionally are creating fear and creating a pandemic, or attempting to create a pandemic, in order to obtain some kind of control over us. This is clearly what happened with COVID, as you know, even the CIA has admitted now that the virus came out of the lab in Wuhan, that it was an engineered virus. Around 2012 or somewhere about thereabouts, was found in a cave of bats in China and was brought to the lab and was manipulated for several years to essentially weaponize it. Late in 2019, that virus was released. Whether it was intentional or unintentional remains unclear, but it definitely came out of the lab. They allowed the World Military Games, which is an Olympic type event, to take place in
Squid Games. I digress.
Wuhan, China, of all places, brought all kinds of people from all over the world, allowed it to spread, and then by early 2020, it was declared to be this pandemic.
Okay, so I know that this is not specifically speaking on, hold on, y'all. Specifically speaking on the eggflation, but there is definitely a correlation and a connection. So I want to establish that, and I don't want us to forget, okay? You had Trump in office saying initially, at least that was the first time I heard it, was that it came out of a Wuhan lab. He was drugged, okay? Oh, he don't know what he's talking about. He's a white supremacist. He's this, he's that, da, da, da. Nobody wanted to give credence to that fact. Now, as he stated, the CIA has come out and admitted that it originated from a Wuhan lab, whether it was intentionally done or unintentionally done. When you want to know where you're going, look at where you've been. Look at the past to be able to determine where the future lies and what to expect, so you can prepare for war, because we are in a war. I don't know the last time you done heard that, but I wanted to refresh your memory.
We had all of these civil rights violations, locking us down, not allowing us to earn a living in the name of protecting us from this virus. They have a countermeasure, and the countermeasure is to develop these vaccines. They could compel us, they could kind of coerce us into taking these highly profitable and turns out quite toxic vaccines. For what reason? Because they would make a lot of money, and because they would exert control over us to continue to take these vaccines in the future. So now,
money and power. Follow the money and the greed, and you will find the ones that have more money than they will ever be able to spend, them or their 3 generations, 4 generations out. But it's the power, it's the greed attached to it. It's the agenda. It's the outside purpose. So though this starts as eggs, eggs ain't nothing but a symptom of the illness of greed and power.
Now, let's fast forward to what's happening right now with the bird flu. There are multiple labs that have taken a previously naturally occurring H5N1 bird flu. They've been manipulating it in the lab, doing gain of function, which means trying to make it more transmissible and more virulent. And in fact, they're very aggressively trying to get it to jump species, which is there's no good reason to do this. Two of the prominent labs in the United States that are doing this are the Southeast Poultry Research Laboratory, which is owned and operated by our own USDA, is doing this crazy research in Athens, Georgia, and it's almost certain that this is the location by which the current circulating clade, as they call it, of this virus leaked out of. Now, whether it leaked out intentionally or unintentionally, I don't know, but we're pretty confident that's where it came from. And Peter McCulloch and Nick Hulscher and some other people have done some incredible work to trace it, incredible detective work to trace this down. They've published it, and no one's even bothered to try and refute it. Of course, our FDA is now claiming that they're doing all they can to contain this, when in fact, they almost certainly leaked the virus out. I don't.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember that saying that I keep hearing in my head, but it eludes me at this very moment. And it applies to Big Pharma, right? There's a connection here. You create the problem and then provide the solution. I've known, I can't speak for nobody else, but I've known that the FDA, particularly, I felt like they were exposed and really were showing their panties involuntarily back during COVID. You got the CIA, you got all of these governmental entities that our taxpayers' monies fund, keep going, but we have no say-so as to the narratives that are being pushed, the lies that are being brought forth, or the untruths. And now you have these laboratories that I believe should be shut all the way down. And they are also being funded by taxpayers. And now we're not just dealing with the United States, we are dealing with this issue worldwide. This is a worldwide issue. You have multiple countries, and it typically, if you do your research, it is the biggest and most heavily populated countries that are having the same issues. How, Sway? How? How is it that United States and the United Kingdom are having such parallel issues at the same time? The exact same issue. Their eggs are high too. When the chicken farms were being disintegrated, they were having the same complaints as well. China is far as hell from us. They're having the same complaints simultaneously at the same time. This all cannot be a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I just wanted to say that. Let's go.
I don't know whether it was intentional or not. The other lab, and there's multiple labs that do this type of gain of function research on bird flu that's really implicated in this, is at the University of Wisconsin Veterinary School. There's a guy, a Japanese national by the name of Yoshihiro Kawaoka. He's been there for many years, funded by all kinds of sources. He's funded by NIH. He's funded by Gates Foundation. There's all kinds of just really ill-advised stuff. President Obama, back in 2014, put a temporary ban on gain of function research in the United States. Some of the people that blew the whistle on him, you wouldn't believe. Paul Offit, who's one of the big apologists for vaccines, was one of the people who was so alarmed by what this guy Kawaoka was doing that even he blew the whistle on him. Anthony Fauci found a way around this largely by outsourcing the stuff to China for the coronavirus work, and to some extent just ignoring Obama's ban. But that's how bad these gain of function people are. Now you've got these leaked, lab manipulated viruses that are out there. And fortunately, what we're seeing in the population is not as bad as they're advertising. Birds that are getting sick, occasional cows that are getting the virus as well, although the cows don't get very sick. I'm not aware of any. There may be some, but I'm not aware of any cow deaths. And 67 human beings in North America in the last couple of years have gotten this. And for the overwhelming.
Okay, so we can't just slide past that. He said 67 cases of the bird flu in the past couple of years. The way that COVID spread, there is no comparison. So why are we in the situation that we're in currently with these eggs? If the bird flu, 67 is, you can get 3 classrooms in a regular school, high school, that don't amount to 67 people. So why is this propelling such a dire need for us to be limited on our eggs? Now we have a cap where we can only buy so many at one time, and then we're paying 300% interest or 300% increase than a year ago today. When you talking about statistically and data speaking, why 67 cases in the past 2 years?
The majority of them, it's been conjunctivitis, it's been pink eye. There was one report of a person who died in Louisiana with the bird flu. They would not go so far as to say that the person died of the bird flu, although some of the media outlets claimed that, but that has not been stated. They are encouraging the farmers to do willy-nilly PCR testing on their flocks. If they test positive, what they're doing is mass slaughtering the entire flock if so much as one bird tests positive for the illness.
A PCR test.
Okay, let me let him finish.
Which has a lot of false positives. They have one positive, they will kill the entire flock. Some of these farms.
Y'all, we cannot ignore this as if it doesn't exist. So he just said, now there are chicken plants and farms that have hundreds of thousands of chickens, not just thousands. You have some large ones out there that have hundreds of thousands of chickens. PCR tests, according to Dr. Bird, he's saying that there is a history of a lot of false positives. They're known, those PCR tests are known to issue false positive results. If one bird in that entire facility comes up positive, which could be a false positive, they're going to take out the whole population of chickens. Okay? I just wanted to make sure that we understood what was being said, because that's something. Oh, my bad, y'all.
Clear, but it definitely came out of the lab. They allowed the World Military Games, which is an Olympic type event, to take place in Wuhan, China, of all places. Brought all kinds of people from all over the world, allowed it to spread, and then by early 2020, it was declared to be this pandemic. We had all of these civil rights violations, locking us down, not allowing us to earn a living in the name of protecting us from this virus. They have a countermeasure, and the countermeasure is to develop these vaccines. They could compel us, they could kind of coerce us into taking these highly profitable and turns out quite toxic vaccines. For what reason? Because they would make a lot of money, and because they would exert control over us to continue to take these vaccines in the future. So now let's...
Money and control. They're synonymous, they're linked, they're connected, and they go together. Money yields power, yields control. This is what they want. They want all three. Money being the least, because they have enough of it. The power is the ability to exert authority over the masses from such an elitist position, from a smaller position. Control is the ultimate hoorah and the ultimate goal. It's a process. You can't have one without the other, control being the ultimate goal. You control the food, you control the people.
Fast forward to what's happening right now with the bird flu. There are multiple labs that have taken a previously naturally occurring H5N1 bird flu. They've been manipulating it in the lab, doing gain of function, which means trying to make it more transmissible and more virulent. And in fact, they're very aggressively trying to get it to jump species, which is there's no good reason to do this. Two of the prominent labs in the United States that are doing this are the Southeast Poultry Research Laboratory, which is owned and operated by our own USDA, is doing this.
So they wanted to jump species. So they wanted to go from the chickens to the humans. That's what the goal is. That's what they're working towards. The scientists in the labs allegedly are gearing towards. That's the goal, right? That's the vision. And it's being signed off by our own U.S. Department of Agriculture. To me, and this is just my personal opinion, these are just names of organizations that are funded by those in control to make it seem as if it's legit. While we're being entertained literally to death, we got all these different sports that are multi-billion-dollar profit houses every year. Keeps us definitely distracted. We got the celebrities. We even got politics. Between those entities, just to name a few, we're always immersed and got something to talk about. Something other than what keeps us breathing and what keeps us sustained as a human species. Our food, our shelter, and our water, and our air. They done messed the air up so bad that we got more people with asthma and respiratory issues than ever in history. It doesn't just mess with your respiratory system, it messes with us in every aspect of our DNA, from psychological to mental, to going down on a cellular level, and it alters our DNA. But we worried about who making it to the Super Bowl, who can dunk, who is screwing how many other people's wives. We got all these other things that we concerned about. We got people that are having cancer at an exponential rate. I got a niece that was diagnosed with breast cancer that had a double mastectomy at the age of 32. Cancer used to be looked at as an old person's disease. But we got children's cancer centers and hospitals all over this country. What is really going on? Where is our fervor going? Where is our passion going? No disrespect to the bullshit, but when you click off, if you click off on this YouTube or other social media outlets, one thing I know for sure, two things I know for certain, is that we all have some real life shit to deal with. Selena, they're not just doing something to the food. They've been doing something. You got Bill Gates that owns over 60%. That's over half of the farmland in this country. We talking about, come on now. I don't have to say no more than that. I don't have to say no more than that. Bill Gates and his foundation, and him and his, if I'm not mistaken, him and his wife are divorced. But his wife got the same type of ownership over the foundation that he does. But he owns over 60% of the farmland. China owns over 10%. You know what that leaves for the American people that actually pay the taxes, that actually keep this economy going? That's less than 30%, less than half. We got the U.S. Department of Agriculture. These are supposed to be entities. The FDA signed off on those jabs of all of the different sources. I'm not going to name them. If you know, you know. If not, go look them up. So you get no faith and no type of backing from me. I don't believe none of y'all. So I don't know, Selena, I think you just came in, but there was a video earlier in the stream where there was a woman that has a farm and she has chickens. And she said as long as she said she didn't, from Halloween, which was the end of November, to February, none of her chickens produced eggs. So she went from the commercial feed and she started giving her chickens the goat feed that she feeds her goats. And now her chickens are starting to reproduce eggs again. So it is no secret, and we don't need confirmation or denial from the sources that got their hands in the pot. We don't have none of that going on. None of that's necessary. All we got to do is look at real life situations, use your logic, your common sense, and figure that thing out for yourself as to what is reliable and what is not. I didn't mean to become long-winded, but y'all, we got to really, there's some of us that are starting to see or that have been seeing it. We have a few of those, and we still have people that just will not acquiesce to the fact that we are in a matrix. We are the pawns in a chess game. They laugh at us. If you haven't seen Squid Games, go look at it. I don't care if it is in China or originated from China and it's Chinese. The fact of the matter is we the squid in the game. Because this is a new world order. Goals. We are talking about our food. We are talking about our food. Our food affects our cellular, or lack thereof, cellular regeneration, and our DNA. It affects our children. It affects our grandchildren. It affects us. It affects our parents. It affects our grandparents if we're blessed enough to still have them. This is the level, and Selena said it. This is the level that these people are willing to go. Like they have no soul. They have no soul.
A PCR test, which has a lot of false positives, they have one positive, they will kill the entire flock. Some of these farms have millions of chickens, correct?
Correct. So they can kill hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of birds at once because of one or two positive PCR tests. That's why, this is important for listeners to know, that's why we have a shortage. The shortage is not because the birds are dying of the bird flu. The shortage is because they're being mass slaughtered if there's even one or two or a small number of positive tests.
Have you heard anything about this happening in smaller backyard farms, people having chickens in their backyards? Is that occurring in that environment at all, or is it just mainly the industrial size chicken farms?
It's an excellent question. I don't have a definitive answer, but what I would say is that supposedly this individual that got extremely sick in Louisiana caught it from their backyard chicken farm. However, what's causing the price of eggs to go up is this ridiculous policy of slaughtering whole flocks when you have one or a few positive tests. And of course, just to show you how dishonest the whole process is, they call it culling. Well, you can look up the definition of culling in the dictionary. It has nothing to do with mass slaughter. Mass slaughter is the opposite of culling. That's how dishonest this process is. And according to the sources I've heard from, we've spent our taxpayer dollars over $1.25 billion to fund this mass slaughter of these animals. So we are paying with our own.
So, okay, he was getting ready to say it. We paying with our own tax dollars the slaughter of our own food sources. How maniacal and diabolical do you have to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that you are responsible? If for no other reason, you are aware that this is going on.
Tax dollars to kill these animals, to drive up food prices, to make a shortage of eggs. And this is driving this whole thing, not the flu itself.
Basically, the farmers get paid for that loss from the taxpayers.
Correct. So the farmers have a perverse incentive, and I don't blame the farmers because the farmers are caught between a rock and a hard place. They've got the government coming in and telling them, we need to test your birds, but don't worry, if they test positive, we'll pay to kill them, and we'll pay you at least market price, maybe more, in order to solve the problem. What it's doing is artificially creating a shortage. It's artificially creating fear. It's artificially creating crisis. Instead of locking us all down and holding us hostage physically or metaphorically until we accept the human vaccines, what they're doing instead is they're destroying an important element of our food supply unless we allow them to mass vaccinate all these birds.
So that's really the agenda, is they want to mass vaccinate now entire farms. That's really what they want to do.
There's no other way around it, because right before Trump took office, what did they do? They gave a conditional approval to Zoetis, which is a very large animal vaccine company, a couple of days before Trump was inaugurated.
Why are animals being why is there a need or a requirement for there to be vaccination companies and corporations for animals? Okay, so listen, I gotta take a pause. I gotta take a natural pause, because the level of being so diabolical with that, in my opinion, alleged depopulation agenda is, on the surface, we looking at it as eggs being super expensive. But when you start delving and looking down that rabbit hole of where all of this leads to, greed, money, power, and control. They are struggling to control the current population. They don't want the old heads here. We the first to be annihilated, to be eradicated, to be out of the equation. And simultaneously, while they trying to get rid of the old heads, the elders, the wisdom, the encyclopedias of the way back when shit worked, when farming and owning and operating your own food sources, lands worked. That's not in alignment with their agenda. Simultaneously, while they're focusing on the old heads and getting rid of the old heads, they're trying to convert the children. They're making the children docile through the jabs, through the foods. There's so much estrogen in milks, whether it's almond, whether it's regular, they're modifying it all. You want to know why everybody, not everybody, the majority of the masses don't give pushback? Because for the past 30 years, they've been putting in the processed foods and in the food supply that they provide for us to buy. It's a win-win situation. So they're getting rich, accumulating more wealth and power off of us by doing that. And at the same time, they're making the population more docile and less resistant to change, or more resistant. Less resistant to change. This is a problem. And I love how this man, because we're gonna play some more of this. I think every word he said needs to be heard, digested, and meditated upon. Because one of the points that he makes, not to give a spoiler alert, but to emphasize and say, you know what? We cannot sit back idly and let this happen. There is no other way but to address this head on, to become proactive. Guess what that's going to take? That's going to take cohesiveness. That's going to take being collective. That's going to take us banding together and saying, as a unit, even if it's just on this one topic, and that's our food, we're not going to deal with this. You're going to have to do something different. Move around, go away, do something, because this ain't going to work. But as long as we remain complicit and quiet, and we keep going to the grocery store and paying what they're charging, not even knowing what we're getting, whether it's a real egg, whether it's been pumped with all kind of chemicals, whether it's plastic or whether it's rubber, we paying for it. How far you think this is going to take us? And for those that have children, you better be thinking about when your time is up, what's going to be left for your children.
The Biden administration gave a $590 million grant to our old friends Moderna to start developing mRNA-based technologies for bird flu. So so again, what does it come down to? We come down to it just like with COVID, a big payoff for Moderna to force us all to accept mRNA vaccines.
What do we really need to do to stop this? What are some things that need to happen?
We need to acknowledge what's going on. This is not a bunch of well-meaning scientists trying to stamp out disease. This is a criminal enterprise. This is basically a protection racket. Nice little farm you got there. It'd be a shame if anything were to happen to it. Don't worry, we'll.
Boom. A lot of extortion going on. When you got these powered entities coming against these family-owned farms, whether they're 1, 2, 3, or even 4 generations deep, they cannot go head up against the ones that's coming to them and say, get down or lay down. You know what it is, and I'm not going to spell it out. Either you get with the program or we burn your shit down.
Protect it. And then we pay you off to do whatever we want with it. If Paul Offit could figure it out in 2012 and Barack Obama could figure it out in 2014, why on earth, after all this we've been put through in COVID, are we not realizing it right now? This gain of function research has to stop. I've said in other places, you don't save Tokyo by creating Godzilla. And this is what.
Ooh, that's a bar. Don't save Tokyo by creating Godzilla. It don't require all of that. Unless you have an agenda. Unless you trying to go somewhere with it. That is not, and you not being forthcoming, you not being transparent, you expecting for us to read in between the lines, draw our own conclusions. But again, one thing we have to keep in mind and remember, y'all, is that there are so many different things that have been in place for so long that by the time we wake up and realize it, in a lot of cases, it's too late. I hate to put it like that, but that's how it's orchestrated. That's how it's designed. Whew.
And this is what they are doing. They're saying we're going to create Godzilla so we can create a vaccine against Godzilla. What on earth are we doing here?
Unfortunately, you can't speak freely about certain topics, but I think things are going to change. Primary target needs to be shutting down these gain of function labs immediately, because it's like, why do we need this? It's like you're producing weapons that are against humanity. It is completely criminal and insane to the nth degree.
So many people are embedded in this to some extent or another. And I think some people that are low to mid-level don't realize exactly why they're doing what they're doing. They believe that what they're being told to do is appropriate. I'll tell you just a funny story. One of the people who is a placeholder at HHS, or rather the CDC right now, he was the former state health commissioner in Maine during COVID. So very much in line with the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that's stated on the CDC website is that he was involved back earlier in his career with bird flu mitigation in Cambodia. Now, of course, Cambodia is a relatively poor country in Southeast Asia where supposedly these viruses originate. The current recommendations in Cambodia, where about 95% of chickens are owned by family farms, maybe 50 to 100 chickens maximum, is if your bird gets sick, you separate the bird from the rest of the flock. Preferably, you sacrifice that animal. Don't eat it. Wash your hands. Common sense.
One solution, too, is to have a lot more small farms and start buying eggs from smaller farms, your local farmers markets. Find a local farmer, because that way we keep things not so centralized, where all of our eggs are in one basket, so to speak.
Yes, I agree. I'll tell you, though, one thing is that this is interesting. I agree with you 100%. Recently in England, which, of course, UK is just an absolute mess in so many different ways, but UK is trying to force people, I don't know exactly where it's at right now, but to force people to register any home poultry that they have. And the National Association for Veterinary Medicine, which is highly beholden to pharma, has put out a release recently that, small family poultry holdings may be a risk to public health. So don't think that they're not going to come after your backyard chickens. You can't run and hide from this. We have to take action. We have to make sure that these people are stopped.
I really appreciate you doing the work, consolidating all this.
So that's what he's saying. What he's saying in essence is that we cannot sit idly by, and even if we, have our own chickens and lay their own eggs in our backyard, and we have our own farm and we're sustainable, self-sustainable, that's not going to solve our issues collectively or individually. Because guess what? Once they deal with the bigger farms, the bigger factories, the bigger corporations or companies, then they're going to come after the smaller ones, because they're not going to know they don't know how to stop. At some point, we are going to have to unionize. At the very least, we are going to have to shift our mindset and say, you know what? At the end of the day, I will do without, and whatever I need, I will learn how to supply for myself. If it's just me and my immediate family, or if it's a tribe or a community, a small community of people that I have together. Support your local farmers. There are egg substitutes that are out here. The vegans will know about it, right? Everybody else, maybe not so much, because they're not marketed. One of the biggest things that I use is flaxseed. Flaxseed is filling. Flaxseed is a great substitute. It's a binding substance, just like eggs. So you can bake with it, you can fry with it, you can blend it with a smoothie. You can do so many different things with flaxseed that, like I said, have binding properties. Other things that have binding properties are bananas and things like applesauces. Maybe not the apples, but once you blend it into an applesauce, it's good to the palate. I mean, I don't know too many people, if anybody, that I know personally don't like apples. I know some people that are allergic to bananas and don't like bananas, but guess what? There are still other alternatives, right? Now, one thing that Miss Yo was talking about as well is she was talking about she get ready to buy some chickens. Get yourself some. If you have a little bit of land, get yourself some chickens. put some things, some proactive, because you got the crows and you got some other stuff, to be concerned about. Even if it's just a few chickens, you want to educate you and your family on how to be able to safeguard the chickens, to care of the chickens, what to feed the chickens. Stay away from commercial feed. That's just my personal opinion, right? There are so many different channels on YouTube of people that live off of the grid that give you the game for free. There are less desirable options like egg powder. But then again, if it supposedly comes from eggs, at some point the cost on that may rise, but it still may be a little more reasonably, excuse me, priced than actual eggs. Buy in bulk and store. You can freeze eggs, whip them up and freeze them. You can freeze anything and then use it for later on, right? Chia seeds. I love me some chia seeds. Great source of fiber, like the flaxseed. Great source of fiber. I appreciate every last one of y'all. Thank you so much for coming through. And I'm going to let y'all get on with y'all day. I appreciate y'all. Peace, and I'm out.